Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 2, Chapter 25, Calling on the Eryne. So last week, our hero, Paymaster Stenstrom, because he actually is a paymaster now after all this hootenanny from Part 2, nearly has his soul ripped from his body via arcane forces, and his dutiful friend and sex partner, Callie, finds him. At first it thinks he's drunk, or balled out, or cooped up. Then he convinces her, I'm not drunk, I am under arcane attack. And she thinks, okay, that's cool. That's better than being drunk or balled out or cooped up. And she helps him create some hermelins, which is the genesis of the mask that he wears. That's why he wears it, is to protect him from arcane forces. He puts these hermelins in a mask, in a roll of cloth, puts it around his face, from like right over his forehead, and then they provide him with protection from whatever it is that is chasing him. He's like, oh God, Mother has sick some really potent and heinous arcane beasts after me, but you know, that's kind of a mean thing for a mother to do. We will see if that is actually the case moving forward. So this week, chapter 25, Calling on the Eryne. This is a longer one. We are introduced to the sect of dirty courtesans known as the Erynes, and they're kind of cool. I think they're cool, and we'll go over some of their finer points after the reading. This is a bit of a long one, so I'm not gonna talk about too much. Let's just get to it. This is one of my favorite chapters in this long, verbose part 2 of the book. So let's see what the chapter holds for us. Part 2, chapter 25, Calling on the Eryne. Hey, Belle! Over here! Dunks yelled as Stenstrom entered the mess. Dunks was a chatty fellow from Planetfall. He was an able, if disinterested officer, having long since resigned himself to the dregs of the fleet. Stenstrom had heard he had a history of bad behavior and erratic manners, always the darting eye and the hand in the pocket. His fleet uniform was rumpled and worn in places, his handsome face unshaved, and his blonde hair often uncombed. And without question, he was conducting some sort of illicit side enterprise. All of the stuff in the hold, the thinly veiled transactions, and the coin payouts to the crew that Stenstrom noticed. In several of their past conversations, he could tell that Dunks was trying to get information out of him to determine if he knew anything. And Stenstrom couldn't care less what he was doing. Callie had promised him that the side venture, whatever it was, wasn't harmful, and he trusted Callie, so he took her at his word and left it alone. By this point, Stenstrom had seen a great deal of the League. He'd seen plenty of Onaris and Xandar, they being frequent stops on the Sandwich's route. He'd also been to Hoban, Brindval, Poteet, and Goima. The problem that dogged his heels was his mother and her black maidens. Every port the Sandwich arrived at, there they were, lurking in the background, waiting for the first chance to get at him. They seemed dark and sinister, as if Mother had something more terrifying than just black maidens set against him. And he had to wear his mask with its protective hermelins all the time now. If he took it off, even for a moment, he instantly felt the clawed hand tearing at his soul. The crew certainly thought it amusing seeing him walk around in his mask. Well, will you think you're a pirate now? Arr, har, 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 they'd say. We surrender, Captain Maskface, they chortled. He refined the mask over time, replacing the original linen with fine black silk from Hoban. He also had redone and refined the mystical hermelins, adding a tiny bit of cadmium to the ingredients, the cad allowing him to sleep a bit better. He was now able to fold and situate the silk more skillfully, rolling the hermelins in with precision. Now the mask was little more than a black headband with two modest diamond-shaped corners of cloth pulled down over his eyes and cut out so he could see. Eventually, the crew stopped making fun of him. Callie didn't even notice it anymore. Lieutenant Dunkster sat there with him in the mess. Every so often, he gave Stenstrom's mask a second look, but if his masked face puzzled him, he kept it to himself. "Belle, I need you to do me a favor." "Sure thing, Dunks. You name it." "We're soon to anchor on Z-Encarr." "Okay, Z-Encarr. Where is that, please?" "It's a floating continent, one of 3 on planetfall. Being a gas giant, there's really no ground to walk around on except deep in the core where nothing can live. So we've built 3 massive platforms to float in the upper atmosphere. Z-Encarr is one of them. Marvels of modern engineering they are. I'm from planetfall. You know that, right?" "Yes." He placed a small money bag on the table. "I need you to off the ship once we anchor up and take this money bag to a lady I know." "Can you do that for me?" "A lady?" "Her name's Christiana." "Just Christiana? No Lady Christiana of?" Dunkster smiled. "No, Belle. She's an ex-dirty courtesan, and she's also my wife." "I thought your wife was on Poteet." She is on Poteet, and she's on Baz too, and several places on Hoban, and here on Planetfall as well. I have 14 wives when I last counted, I think." Dunks jangled the money bag. "This one's important. This one knows certain things, and I need to keep her quiet. I need you to pretend you're me and take her this money bag. It's for her and the kids' upkeep and whatnot." "Oh, kids? I didn't know you had kids." "Oh, I do. I've no idea how many, but it's a lot. And Christiana has 4, I think. She needs this money to help her survive, and I'm very late with this current payment." "Why don't you just put it in her account?" "Oh, Christiana doesn't have a bank account, Belle. She's too stupid to know how a bank works. Come on, Belle, can you be a pal? I can't make it out there. I've got too many meetings to attend, you know. All you have to do is go to her address, hand her the money, and leave. That's it. You don't have to say 2 words to her if you don't want to." Stenstrom looked at the bag. "Well, I'm not nearly as good looking as you, Dunks. I'm certain she recalls what her husband looks like." "Well, I got you covered on that one, Belle. She's nearly blind, you see. Got a dose of bad weed some years back and lost a good deal of her eyesight. Of all my wives, she's probably the most broken down and threadbare. Kind of embarrassing, you know. I'm used to a bit more polished up stuff at my side." Dunks pulled off his coat and laid it on the table. "Just wear my coat. She'll never know the difference. She can sort of see shapes, I think." Stenstrom stared at it. A fleet lieutenant's coat. "Why? For feel or," as Stenstrom noted, "for the smell?" "Both. Christiana knows the smell of her hubby, sure enough." Stenstrom thought it over. "Well, sure, Dunks, sure. Just give me her address." Dunks wrote it down on a slip of paper. "Appreciate this, Belle. You're saving me a lot of trouble. Oh, just between the 2 of us, you can bed her down if you want. I don't care. Maybe she'll have a heart attack right in the middle of it and save me a lot further trouble and expense. I was hoping she would have keeled over a long time ago, and you know, it's insurance." Stenstrom found Dunks' attitude towards his wife a bit annoying. How bad could she be? He took Dunks' coat and went back to his room. Staring into the mirror, he put it on. It was a little dirty and somewhat threadbare in places, but he stared nonetheless. A fleet coat. Some of his lost little boy dreams returned to him, wearing the clothes his father had sent and his mother had burnt. Looking good. Fit him well. He was missing something, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Ah, a hat. He needed a triangle hat, just like they wore in the fleet. He went down the hall and knocked on the bosun's cabin. Nobody answered. The door was locked, but with a fast shake of his hands and a nimble movement of his fingers, the door swung open. Mr. Pike? Stenstrom asked, peeking in. The cabin was empty. He stepped in and borrowed one of the bosun's hats, as they appeared to have a similar head size. He popped it on. Not used to triangle hats, it felt strange. Ah well, he'd get used to it. He locked the bosun's cabin up and headed back to his room and loaded up with marzible, holy stones, and his trusty ints. Then he left his room and exited the ship. Address in hand, Stenstrom walked off the plank of the Sandwich. He was wearing Dunkster's coat and the bosun's hat, and though it was dirty and rather seedy, the ensemble felt wonderful. Even the hat, how he had always longed to wear such a thing. Callie was walking out of the ship as well. "Hey, Belle," she called. "I'm heading out to the bars with some of my friends. Want to come? Where'd you get that hat?" "I borrowed it from the bosun." "Borrowed it? Looks like we're starting to rub off on you a little. Such a shame to mess up your handsome face with that hat." She noted his coat. "Oh, Dunks has you out on a mission, right? He wants you to go see one of his wives, doesn't he?" "Something like that. Just a quick errand." She looked a little concerned. "Well, you're a big fella and all. You'll be just fine." Stenstrom was apprehensive. "I detect a hint of concern in your voice." She hesitated and pulled him aside off the gangplank. "Okay, look. Dunks has a thing for ex-errands. Do you know what those are? I mean, we're talking some pretty trashy stuff here. And I'm not sure a classy great lord like you invests himself in much of that. I hope not, anyways." "Errands? Well, those are courtesans, if I'm not mistaken." "Oh, they're more than just that, Belle. They're either the best or the worst, depending on how you look at it. Errands can do things to you unholy. You name it. Secrets, thoughts, blind obedience. They can screw it right out of you, or into you, as the case may be. You laugh, but they are nothing to trifle with. They use some sort of supercharged strain of the weed, and they know how to make the most of it. It gives them glowing red eyes. The red eye weed. You get it? That's why they call it the red eye weed. The weed they use takes a toll on their bodies, and it wears them out. It makes them old, and Dunks has a thing for these old, broken-down errands. He marries them at a whim and collects them like discarded bottle caps. Sometimes he uses them to find out things or to get into people's heads. Virtually every port we stop in, he's got an old errand wife stashed somewhere, and Planetfall's no exception. And just like an old attack dog that's all beaten up and tired, they still have teeth. They can still bite. Be careful, okay?" "I will, Callie. Thanks." She gave her lips a tap with her finger, and Stenstrom shot her a kiss. She smiled at him and walked down the wharf. "If you change your mind, we'll be at one of the wharfside bars," she called out. She pointed at her neck. "I've got my holom on, so just holom on me up if you need to find me, 'kay?" He waved her goodbye. "I don't carry a holom on, Callie, but thanks." Planetfall was a turbid gas giant with several floating continents drifting through its upper atmosphere. It had no habitable surface. The vast metal continents floating on air were marvels of engineering, completely self-contained and featuring a sort of reverse gravity to counteract the crushing gravity of the planet below. Looking up, Stenstrom could see a banded lacework of white, red, and orange clouds swirling past at high, wind-driven speeds. Used to the soft blue sky of Cana, the perpetual clouds of the place with its wild orange tint made him feel a little uneasy. And there was also Modron, a small moon that was slowly being pulled into Planetfall's interior. It orbited far below, hidden in the clouds, moving at blistering pace, its passing pulling on his guts in a sickening manner. He walked at a brisk pace into the interior of the massive skyscraper-clogged city, his boots clacking on the metal street. Despite Callie's rather ominous warning, he had a spring in his step as he worked his way into the man-made canyons of Z-Encarr. Many people stopped and tipped their hats. "Evening, Lieutenant." "Nice day, Lieutenant." "Care for some company, Lieutenant?" "Got a dime, Lieutenant?" Only a few people stopped and noticed he was wearing a mask. It was hard to see under the bosun's hat. He felt true joy wearing Dunks' seedy coat and the bosun's hat. The clothes made him feel whole. He had to be careful, though. He looked around, peering twice into the shadows and distant reaches. He was certain he'd seen the hint of darting black robes and hooded faces looking at him in the far distance. His holy stone was rumbling steadily. Black maidens, they were here. They had to be. He wore his mask and his bullabong refreshed with Callie's scent, and together they gave him protection, as the maidens couldn't see and smell him, but they could still sense him, feel his presence. They appeared to be not giving up. He had to make this fast. Moving on, Stenstrom found the address. It was a smallish row house tenement on a seedy side street. So, an Eryne lives here, he thought, like an old pet that still has teeth. He wondered what sort of hellion raged within. He walked up the steps and knocked on the door. After a moment, a red-headed woman with squinting brown eyes emerged. She was wearing a brown dress with an apron tied over the top. He remembered Callie's warning. The weed they use takes a toll on their bodies, wears them out, makes them old. He was expecting a proverbial old crone to come out, bent and withered, like in his picture books that he and Lyra thrilled over when he was a child, the ones Virginia was too scared to look at. Old crones were monsters from fairy tales. Nobody got old in the League, except for the sick and the badly bred. Upon seeing her, he was a tad disappointed. Christiana certainly didn't look old and worn out. She was tall, nearly 6 feet, and stood with a practiced posture. Her skin was a pleasing pearly shade. Her brassy red hair was thick and full, held back with unseen pins and clips. Her face was pretty, heart-shaped after a fashion, with well-formed cheekbones and a large pair of striking brown eyes, lost in the confusion of blindness. Her waist was very thin. He imagined she'd probably spent years suffocating in a laced-up corset. "Dunks, is that you?" she said tentatively, her voice accented in a brogue planetfall burr, opening the screen door. Stenstrom didn't quite know what to do. Dunks hadn't briefed him on how to interface with his wife. He hadn't thought of that. The way Dunks described it, he figured he'd knock on the door, a gnarled hand would come out, accept the money, and go back in, shutting the door behind it with little or no interface. But there she was, standing in the door. He tried to disguise his voice and sound like Dunks. Yeah, Christiana, it's me." She smiled and reached out. "Let me look at you." Probing with her hand, she found his face and began feeling his chin with her fingers. Her hands found his hat. Her hands! They were the hands of a hag, bony, withered, and the skin dull and parchment-like. So that's what the weed did to her. "Have you lost weight, Dunks?" she asked. Yeah, stellar food. It's terrible." Her bent fingers found the fabric of his mask. "What is this?" she asked. "Oh, I got her. It's just a bandage. It's nothing." Christiana pulled him forward and gave him a kiss on the cheek. "I've made lunch for us. Please come in and share it with me." His holy stone gave a rumble. Stenstrom looked down the street and clearly saw 4 figures in black standing in the distance, teetering about, sniffing the air. Here, with Christiana nearby and his mask, he should be safe. Sure, he said, stepping in. The interior of the apartment was small and modest. Children's toys lay scattered about. Piled up on the couch were sorted stacks of children's clothing. In a small closet, a primitive manual wash basin was full of soapy water, and an old air oven was crammed in beside it. A scratchy program played on her battered AirNet receptor in the sunken living room. Christiana, holding his hand, led him to her tiny dinner table. Feeling her way about, she sat him down to a strange meal of meats and sauces he couldn't really identify. He watched her carefully serve the food. Her hands were so terribly withered and gnarled from the degenerative effect of prolonged contact with the weed. She held her ladle with the hands of a dead woman. Standing there in her tiny galley-style kitchen, wearing an apron, he felt sorry for her as she put the finishing touches on the meal. Dunks said she was stupid, but she didn't appear to be stupid. On the contrary, she seemed to be getting on and dealing with her blindness rather well. Dunks said she was broken down, an embarrassment. Yet, except for her hands, she was beautiful. Dunks hoped she died to spare him further expense. "I've been practicing, Dunks, my cooking. I think I've gotten much better at it." She served the food, and it was good. He had no trouble finishing it. Christiana sat next to him, eating with polished manners and grace, all of her very beautiful, except for her horrid hands. She held her knife and fork court-style, taking tiny bites, chatting happily with Stenstrom, whom she thought was her husband. You can imagine her sitting in some lavish castle or manor, a prim and proper lady of the house. And here she was, living in near squalor, married to a man that had collected her as a prize, and probably didn't even know their children's names. She pointed to a small trophy sitting on the mantel. "What's that?" Stenstrom asked. "It is a merit award. Our son was at the top of his class again." She beamed with pride. "Well, that's, wonderful. Which one?" "Nathan." "Nathan? He's the one who looks like his beautiful mother, yes?" She blushed. Christiana was clearly attention-starved. As she ate, she winced a tiny bit. "Are you having trouble with your teeth, Christiana?" Stenstrom asked. She shook her head. "It's, nothing." "Let me have a look, please." He leaned in and she swallowed and wiped her mouth with her napkin. She opened her mouth. Several of her teeth were obviously rotten. "You need to see a hospitaller for your teeth." I'm fine." Stenstrom stood up. "Get dressed," he said. She looked up at him. Why? "I saw a hospitaller sanctum a short walk away. We're going to walk there now, and you're going to have your teeth looked at this very afternoon. And then, do you know what we're going to do?" What, Dunks?" "We're going to walk the town, arm in arm. And when we've worked up a healthy appetite, we're going to eat at the finest restaurant we can find. I want to serve you today and show you off to the people as a lady deserves. Go on, I'll take care of the dishes here. Where are the children?" "I sent them away for the day." "That sounds so expensive, Dunks," she said. My teeth, a fine meal. We don't have the money for that." "I had a big score not long ago, and I've coin aplenty. Come on, who better to spend it on than my beautiful wife?" She smiled at the compliment. She got up and made her way into the bedroom. He began cleaning up their lunch, and he could hear her clinking around in the bedroom as he worked. A short time later, she emerged. She had changed into a slender black dress with a pearl heart charm about her neck. In her dress, her corset-created hourglass figure was clear. She put her hair up and was wearing a curved straw hat with a ribbon hanging from the back. Thankfully, she'd put on a pair of black gloves. And she was still such a beautiful woman. Stenstrom took her arm and led her outside. After a short walk, they arrived at the hospitaller sanctum, and they admitted Christiana. Their assessment? 6 teeth needed replacement, and they wanted to see the color of his money before they began. Stenstrom got his money bag out and paid them. 104 sesterces, equaling 400 planetfall billets. As they worked on her, his holy stone rumbled again, warning him of danger. He went outside. Sure enough, 4 black-robed maidens wandered down the lane, their noses in the air. He knew as long as Christiana was with him, her love, though misplaced, would protect him and mask his scent. It was a simple counter-charm he knew worked. The maidens appeared different from how he remembered them, more covered up, more sinister. He could simply shoot them with his ints and be rid of them for now, but he didn't want to shoot a black maiden. They were harmless and benign, and persistent and inconvenient as well. That, however, did not give him lease to kill them. He had made a promise to himself and Calvert not to harm the black maidens ever again. A short time later, Christiana emerged from the sanctum. She had a brand new smile and didn't mind showing it off. What a face when she smiled, a classic beauty. Stenstrom took her arm and led her outside. He watched the maidens disappear into the distance, his scent masked. He strolled the streets with her, people tipping their hats as they passed. He walked her to a market and bought her a modern fabric cleaning unit to replace the ridiculous wash basin she'd been using, and arranged to have it delivered to her apartment. He bought her some toys for the children, again having them delivered. He spent more money on her in one afternoon than Dunks probably had in their entire marriage. He wanted to do nice things for her because it felt good. He felt responsible for her somehow, that this afternoon she was his to care for, and he'd not spare a dime. They passed a bank. Christiana, do you have a bank account?
Oh, no, I don't. Dunks, I've never learned to use one.
Stenstrom pulled her toward the bank. Well, come on. We're going to go inside. I'm going to create an account for you, and I'm going to deposit money into it every month for you and the kids. I'll show you how to access your account from home when we get back. They finished and continued their stroll. He could see the rusty bulk of the sandwich sitting at the wharf. He took her to an expensive-looking restaurant and let her have whatever she wanted. Through the meal, he told her about all the places they had recently been, she closing her eyes and listening. As the gas giant sky faded to a nighttime brown, he walked her back to her apartment. There, using the HoloNet, he showed her how to access her new bank account. Using voice command, she picked it up rather quickly. She wasn't dumb at all.
That was a wonderful meal. What a delightful evening, and my teeth to eat without the pain. The children are gone, Dunks,
she said, trying to pull him into their bedroom, but he talked his way out of it. He then led her back to her small sitting room, put her feet up, and tucked her in with a blanket. He put the money bag Dunks had given him into a drawer and told her where it was.
Will you come back soon, Dunks?
She asked, looking at him with mostly blind eyes.
Please say you'll come back.
You bet. I'll be back tomorrow, I promise. He kissed her goodnight and took his leave, watching for the black maidens. He didn't see any, his holy stone quiet. Good night, Christiana, he said.
I love you,
she returned. As he began walking down the street, his holy stone suddenly went wild. 4 black maidens appeared all around him. They surrounded him, groping with their bony arms. They pawed at him, trying to see him. He had no place to go. He felt his soul churn, and they fell upon him. They reached out, grasping with their fingers, acting in an aggressive, belligerent manner that was unusual for black maidens. They found his mask and tore it from his face along with his hat and his billabong. They threw them aside. Stenstrom put his hands up. All right, you got me. I guess it's time to go see Mother.
Mother?
One of them tore away the veil covering her face. She had no face, only a large smiling mouth and chattering teeth.
You are ours. We will feast upon your soul.
Holy creation, what had Mother done? These weren't black maidens. These were soul devourers. Mother had put a stain on his soul, and he was doomed.
Your soul!
He drew his ints and fired, getting one in the chest. She bent over and disappeared. The rest pulled him down. He fired his other int, then got another one. She disappeared too. They closed in, giving him no space, no room to aim his guns. They pawed and tore at him. He dropped one of his ints and fell to the street. A moment later, the remaining 2 soul devourers seemed to recoil in pain and quickly retreated, covering their faces. Stenstrom cocked his nth. He fired, hitting one in the back where she vanished in a grisly spray. He picked up the other nth he dropped, and then got the last with a longer range shot, the green blast lighting up the street as he fired. Something touched him from behind, and he whirled around. It was Christiana. She had emerged from the apartment. She was holding his mask in her hand. She reached out, searching.
What is going on? I thought I heard something. Dunks, did you drop your handkerchief? I can smell your cologne on it.
Her presence had driven them away, giving him a chance to be rid of them with his pistols.
It's nothing,
Stenstrom said, panting. He took his mask and put it back on. His thoughts spun in a panic. Soul devourers! What had his mother done? He was doomed. They'd be back, and they'd get him sooner or later.
It's nothing.
Christiana, let me take you back inside and tuck you in again, he said, his voice shaking. Stenstrom helped her inside while figuring out his next move. At least now he knew they were soul devourers, and he would feel empowered to shoot and kill them from a distance. He hadn't wanted to treat a gentle black maiden in that fashion if he could help it. Suddenly there was Christiana. She put her gloved hands on his face and kissed him with fire.
I was to question you today, to discover what you know, she whispered, kissing him. My husband thinks you know something. He thinks you're a spy sent from the fleet, and I was to uncover it. He wants to know who you're working for, and here you are, such a fine young man who knocked on my door today. You've done much for me. You've entertained me. You've listened to my stories and told a few in return. You asked the name of my son, something my husband has never done. You walked at my side and held my arm, as a lord does for his lady, and I was proud to stand there with you. I have not been admired as I walked down the street in some time. You took away my pain, and mostly you've helped restore a shred of my dignity that I'd long lost. During our afternoon today, I indulged myself. I pretended that you actually are my husband, and that the two of us share a love seldom seen. Wouldn't that be nice? To have a husband who actually loves me and our children. I am not a puppet, and I care not what my husband wants. You have earned my adoration. I invite you into my bedroom, not because of my husband, but because I want you. You shared much with me today, and I want to share with you all I have to give.
He pulled away. Please, Christiana.
I am blind, but I am not dead, and I am still a woman. You are not my husband. You are a good man, and I want to be with you.
She pulled him back into the apartment. He was feeling shaky from his encounter with the soul devourers. He didn't have the strength to resist. And soon, he was in Christiana's bedroom, she all around him. She was still using a lesser strain of the weed, and it belted him into places he'd never been before, stabbing him with frenzied jolts. Making love to Lily was a joy, a smooth scent of perfume. Making love to Alatrix was a fragile and private, she unsure and remarkably in need of assurance and tenderness. Making love to Lady Miranda was weird and a little painful, and making love to Callie was fun and carefree. But this was savagery. This was nearly a fight to the death. This was top to bottom, skin to skin, sweat to sweat, body against body. He could barely breathe and he couldn't think. Christiana used the weed relentlessly, prolonging the act, taking him to unbearable stages, flawlessly playing the notes of a complex tune on his body, whipping him up into small pieces of lather and ecstasy, and moving on when he could take it no more. This is what it was like to experience an Eryne in action. He thought he could hear her speaking to him, not with her mouth. Somewhere she was making a lot of noise with her mouth, but he was only partially aware of it. He was making a lot of noise too. His heart pounded. He saw stars. He saw through time. He heard her voice.
I was cleaned once, a dame respected and feared, and all my needs doted on and cared for. I have enslaved many, and I've killed and wrung out secrets. I had only to ask, and anything I desired was mine. Then I grew old, my body beginning to fail me, and I was clean no more. Cast out, used up with no skills other than my lexicon of the night. You've nothing to fear, and I'm not going to harm you. Let me worship you.
Cowley's green eyes and pink hairband flashed into his thoughts.
Dunks has a thing for old Erynes, and he collects them like discarded bottle caps. I have no idea how many he's married to, but it's a lot. Watch out for the Erynes, even old and used up. They can do things to you unholy. Man or woman, they can make you talk. No secret you have is beyond their reach, and that's old and rotten using crap weed. Just imagine a fit one on a mission with that red-eyed stuff they use. They can kill you if they want.
Christiana was a master. She certainly could kill him if she wanted, or extract secrets he was hers to do with as she would. Christiana, who walked with him in his arm, basking in the attention and eating her dinner with perfect grace, was now a fierce warrior using her body and the weed as a terror weapon and execution tool. She asked him no lengthy questions. The only secret she extracted from him,
What is your name?
In psychedelic jolts, he saw technicolor splashes of lily. In psychotropic mush, he saw Alatrix devastated, crying for attention, and Callie smiling, ready to try anything. And soon, when he thought he could endure no more, it was over. Christiana lying next to him, her lazy gloved fingers dabbing away jewels of sweat from his chest, both of them soon passing out.
And you banged her?
Cowie's green eyes were huge as she leaned over her lunch in the mess. They were back on the ship, both Planetfall and Christiana far away. Well, must you be so crude? But yes, I didn't have the strength to resist. Well, you returned the next day, didn't you? I did, but not for the sex. I returned for the company. I found her a lovely woman.
But you still had sex again the second time, right?
Of course.
See? Told you, they're tough. So how was it?
Remarkable. It was remarkable.
Okay, you look a little tired.
I'm exhausted, actually. Callie took a bite from her sandwich.
Well, you better buck up, because I'm feeling it for tonight, and I don't want to hear any excuses.
And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 25, Calling on the Eryne. So there you have it. We met Christiana of Planetfall, one of Lieutenant Dunkster's many wives. And apparently, Dunks convinced Stenstrom, the son of a fabled warbird captain with programmability out the ass, has got to be on the sandwich for a reason. He's got to be working for somebody, gathering data, or he's there to spy on him and his operation, whatever it is. And he was going to use his Eryne wife, Lady Christiana, or just Christiana, to get out of him who he's working for, what he's doing, and what he knows. That was the whole point of him giving him some money to go see his wife. So the Erynes, and I hope it was clear, are a sect of dirty courtesans, and dirty courtesans are basically prostitutes who use the weed, which is a fungus, to enhance their sexual prowess. And the Erynes there's many dirty courtesans in the league, and there are some sects that go by different names, but the Erynes are by far the most potent. They use the red-eye weed. They are known throughout the league as master interrogators. Most people of means, most potentates, local lords, what have you, have Erynes in their employee, and if they need to extract some information from you, the Erynes can fuck it right out of you. There's really no avoiding it. They can take your secrets, they can implant secrets, It can make you think things that make you think you've experienced something when you actually haven't. They can kill you if they want while you're doing it. And it doesn't matter, man, woman, or whatever, however you identify. The Erynes can do pretty unholy things to you. So, Christiana, and the accent I gave her isn't how I hear her voice in my head. I always talk about people on Planetfall having a really harsh accent, so that was my amateur attempt to create a harsh accent. Kind of sound like a Slav, maybe Slavic person. I don't know. It sounded weird, but that's not necessarily the voice I hear in my head. That's just the only one I could produce. He goes there, and he actually is kind to her. He takes an interest in her. He asks her about her children. He feels sorry for the impoverished circumstance she finds herself in. And apparently, as she says later, she was once a very highly placed Eryne, a queen, a person who was pampered and had all of her needs taken care of. But then the weed just took it out of her to some extent, made her old, and the only place it really manifests is in her hands, which are pretty gnarled and hag-like, but the rest of her is still fine. But she lives basically in squalor with a captain who's basically married her just to collect her and use her when he needs. Stenstrom finds that some of her teeth are rotten, takes her out and has her teeth fixed. And then he takes her out on the town and treats her with respect. And as she said, gave her back a shred of her dignity. Bought her a new washer and dryer, opened up a bank account for her, and is going to deposit money for her every month. And in previous drafts of later books, well, I don't want to go into it now, but him giving Christiana money, it causes him problems with someone that he will be seeing later on. Didn't really like him just giving this dirty courtesan from Planetfall money every month, but he considers her a friend, and he does it, like he said, because he wanted to help her, wanted to make her life a little bit better. And his positive attitude, positive radiations rubbed off on Christiana, and she found she liked him, and she decided, I don't care what my husband Dunks wants. I'm not gonna grill him for info. I'm here for him tonight because he was there for me in the day. So that is that. And then he also finds that some of these arcane creatures chasing him are the dreaded soul devourers, and he's like, what has mother done? And I'm pretty sure his mother wouldn't sick a soul devourer after him. Somebody's sicking things after him, but it doesn't seem like it's his mom. That's just a casual aside. In any event, that is Calling on the Eryne. Well, that's one of my favorites. I liked Lady Christiana a lot. I planned to do things further with her, but I never quite worked out that way. And when I was coming up with how she looked, I clearly had in my head Claudia Cardinale from Once Upon a Time in the West. In fact, the dress she changed into is exactly what Claudia Cardinale was wearing at the beginning of that movie. I just liked it a lot, and I thought she was incredibly beautiful and would make a good sci-fi dirty courtesan, for whatever that's worth. Next week, Part 2, Chapter 26, The HRN. And we are almost done. We have 3 chapters left, including next week, Chapter 26 to Chapter 28. Then we are done with All That Resists Him, the second part of the book. And we get back into the plot. We get back to the Seeker. We get back to Tara and Aram at long last. So until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out. Or as Lady Christiana would say, peace out.